Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and as always, I am so happy to be back here with you today. Last week, if you listened to that episode, like I said, I was sick, and I'm still a little bit sick. I'm still recovering completely, but I have to say, it was not my best, in my opinion. So I am happy to be feeling a bit better and recording for you again today. Now, I don't know when you are going to be listening to this, but this week is a very special, very meaningful, and very painful anniversary for anyone who loves Michael Jackson. June 25th, tomorrow, is the anniversary of Michael Jackson's death. Now, I mentioned this last week, and I wanted to say at the start of this episode that there will be a bonus episode tomorrow that I am releasing to honor Michael Jackson, to just take my own opportunity to express my love and admiration for him, and to really just honor the day as it passes. So this episode today, while you may listen to it on June 25th, this episode is meant to just continue our current conversation about Dancing the Dream. However, given the date, given the closeness to this anniversary, I didn't want to record without first mentioning it. So needless to say, it is a sad week, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. A sad week, a difficult week for Michael Jackson fans. But today we are going to focus and continue focusing on his art and this beautiful book, Dancing the Dream. So with that said, I want to invite you to get comfortable and get cozy and join me for the reading of this week's piece. Last week, the piece was very short and really almost felt like, notes he was scrawling to himself. Still meaningful, but very short. This week, it's another short piece, but it's a bit more crafted in that there's metaphor, there is this deeper meaning I think we can mine for, and I'm looking forward to doing that with you. So please join me for this reading of Two Birds. Two birds. It's hard to tell them what I feel for you. They haven't met you, and no one has your picture. So how can they ever understand your mystery? Let's give them a clue. Two birds sit in a tree. One eats cherries while the other looks on. Two birds fly through the air. One song drops like crystal from the sky, while the other keeps silent. Two birds wheel in the sun. One catches the light on its silver feathers, while the other spreads wings of invisibility. It's easy to guess which bird I am, but they'll never find you unless they already know a love that never interferes, that watches from beyond, that breathes free in the invisible air. Sweet bird, my soul, your silence is so precious. How long will it be before the world hears your song in mine? Oh, that is a day I hunger for. Wow, so this piece is beautiful. I have a lot of thoughts about this piece, and I hope to touch upon them. Sometimes it's challenging for me because I have so many ideas. My mind almost fills with images and and colors and feelings when I read his pieces. And I want to articulate each and every one of them, but figuring out how best to do that can be challenging. Two birds. What a beautiful piece this is. Actually, I've mentioned in recent episodes how I recently moved, and so recording has been a little bit challenging as I'm figuring out exactly what I want my setup to be. However, some of you may have noticed in the last few episodes, you can sometimes hear birds chirping in the background. And it's because in my new home where I'm living, I record in this kind of inside porch area, and outside, directly outside the windows, there's a multitude of trees, and I'm always hearing these birds chirping. And the one thing I will never try to filter out of any episode when it comes to background noise is the sound of birds, the sound of nature. I love it. And so if you've heard that in previous episodes, I'm aware and I leave it in. I do really like it. So this piece, I absolutely love this piece. What I love about it is at the very start, we see Michael confronting something he is trying to articulate and perhaps struggling to do so. It's hard to tell them what I feel for you. Isn't that true? When it comes to any kind of love we have, it's hard to express it. It's hard to capture love. You know, I always say this because I really feel this way when I talk to my students about writing. So many of them want to write about love, of course, but writing about love is really hard because it's both a universal experience and highly individual. Because while everyone understands love and longing and heartbreak and all these various things, no one can understand the specific experience of love you share with another person or that you experience, because no one else is you, right? Like, we can relate to one another in our experiences with love, but we can't actually know what it's like to love someone we never loved. We don't know what that's like. And while I do not feel that this piece is about romantic love at all, and I'll talk about that in a moment, I do think that Michael trying and struggling to express love and trying to create this image of two birds for us to understand it better is representative of this challenge we all have. No one can understand the way we feel and experience love despite the universality of love. I do believe people love in different ways and to different depths, and it affects people differently. And I think Michael was a deeply feeling person who, as an artist, was also deeply expressive and really wanted to be understood. At the heart of so much art is the desire to be understood. And I see that as a part of that. So anyway, that's a very long commentary on the first couple lines here, but I just wanted to mention that. I think it can be difficult for people to understand what they cannot themselves see and feel. Obviously, things like empathy and imagination and all of that allow us a window into someone else's experience. But it's the closest we can ever really get. And that's what's so magnificent about great art, is that great artists can bring us into that feeling almost as if it is our own feeling. And that is kind of bridging the gap between human experiences, which is what unite us. So I love it. And I know that was, again, very long about this opening line or these opening lines, but that is the premise that Michael starts us off with. Now, of course, the entire concept of this poem is based on this metaphor, this depiction of two birds. And Michael says it's easy to tell which bird he is. And I don't know if I agree. I mean, I theorize about it, but I could see it a couple different ways. So I will talk about that as well. Michael's depiction of these two birds is an effort to depict not only the behaviors, but the relationship between these birds. So in a way, I don't know that it's about comparing the birds so much as it is about representing the dynamic between them and the constancy of them being together, right? So I wonder if it would be better, and perhaps it would be better, to share the way I interpret this before I go much further. So Michael attempting to capture and depict how he feels about this you character, in my opinion, and I hope you don't get tired of me saying this, but in my opinion, this is another piece that is about Michael's relationship to God. So it is hard to express what he feels for God and this universal presence of God. It's hard to express. So this is the depiction. We have two birds sitting together. One is enjoying the fruits of what has been provided, eating the cherries, right? The other is sitting idly by, accompanying that bird, but not participating. We have two birds in the sun. One is glistening, a reflection of that world that was created and that they're both experiencing. The other stays back in the shadows a bit. So if we're looking at these two birds as representative of Michael and God, or his relationship with God, I can see why Michael might think it's obvious. Now, to me, my first thought was Michael is the bird that shimmers in the sun, that song is shared, and who is enjoying the cherries. Whereas God is the bird that is staying silently by his side, who is watching him enjoy the cherries, who is silent while he interprets these songs and shares them with the world, and who allows him to stand out and shimmer in the sun that he created. That I can see that. But I also wondered, given what Michael has said about the way music came to him as if from God, as if dropping from the sky, when he says one song drops like crystal from the sky while the other keeps silent, I did have the thought, well, is one keeping silent as it waits for that song to appear? Now, that's just me overthinking it possibly. Needless to say, I prefer the first interpretation here. If this is a piece about God and Michael's relationship with God, Michael is the bird that eats the cherries, sings the song, and shimmers in the sun. That makes sense to me for Michael, right? But I'm open to possibly viewing it differently. When he says it's easy to see which one is me, but they'll never find you, that made me think a little bit about the elusive shadow episode from a couple of weeks ago, where again, I equated the shadow Michael was referring to as Michael's relationship to God. And I can still see that here. And the reason I think Michael says, but they'll never find you, for me, it goes back to what I said a couple moments ago about how one can never know the depth of another person's relationship or the experience of loving someone else. In this case, I believe what Michael is saying is that this is his version of and his particular relationship to God is not something he can really share with anyone else because it's so highly individual to him. So in the way we can't understand someone else's love of their particular, spouse or whatever, we can relate, we can empathize, but we don't know what it's like to experience that love ourselves. I would say Michael is suggesting the same thing here. And if we go even further back to a previous piece, I think it was the God episode, where we're talking about the individual variations of how people experience God and how different religions express their understanding of God, I think we would find the same message here too, where if you think about this, like every person has a twin bird or an elusive shadow, and those things represent our individual relationship to God. That is not a universal experience. While I think Michael may suggest we all have the relationship, therefore we all have access to God in some way, that is the universal part. The individual part is the specifics of that relationship and of that feeling that accompanies that relationship. So if we are wondering what Michael's relationship is with God based on this piece, we can continue to read. He says, they'll never find you unless, so people will never see or never understand unless they also feel this particular way that he's about to share. So unless they already know a love that never interferes, that watches from beyond, that breathes free in the invisible air. Let's break that down a little bit. A love that never interferes. So a love that does not judge, does not disrupt, does not stop or propel, but just is. So a constant presence of love that simply is, that watches from beyond. The presence is there, that it observes and it pays attention, but it is not right there. It's watching from its own space and perspective. Perhaps beyond means not just distance, but a certain type of placement, where beyond isn't just beyond our viewpoint, it's beyond our whole realm of existence. It's not human, it's something that is in a different dimension of understanding or a different plane of reality in some way. That breathes free in the invisible air. So what does that mean? Breathes free in the invisible air. If it's breathing free, it's unrestricted. If it's invisible air, it's real, but it's not something we can access. So kind of like it's all around us, but it's not obvious. You can equate that maybe to wind, where you can feel the presence of it, but it is invisible. I mean, to us, as humans, it is invisible. We can't physically see wind, but we can feel it, and we cannot deny its presence. That's kind of how I read that. And then he continues, sweet bird, my soul, your silence is so precious. And this again reminds me of the episode a few weeks ago, The Elusive Shadow, where throughout the whole episode, I referenced that the shadow was about God or his relationship to God. At the end of the piece itself, he says directly, the elusive shadow is my soul. Here he says, sweet bird, my soul. So that makes me think again that rather than Michael viewing his soul as this individual representation of him, perhaps he viewed his soul as this grounding connection to God, or maybe as an offshoot of God. There are a number of pieces where he sort of touches upon this, and certainly this philosophy he had is not limited to Michael Jackson, but throughout the book thus far, I do think he's talked about this idea that the world is heaven, the world is representative of heaven and of God, and God is in all of us in different ways. So maybe this unifying feeling of him with his soul, his human ego with his soul, is not just this individualized soul like we often think about it as, but it's his lifeline and connection to something greater like God. Your silence is so precious. I find that fascinating because so often when people are struggling and seeking something from their own faith, they will look for some answer from God, and God being silent can feel like you're alone, like you're absent of something. But here when he says your silence is so precious, I interpret it more as your silence is so valuable and wise, because it's a love based not on commentary or control, but a love based on total acceptance, a love that is in no way conditional, because it's not trying to shape or influence. It is present regardless. And that silence, in a way, represents the presence without the conditional aspect. I mean, if we think about our own relationships with the people in our lives, it's probably difficult for most of us to identify those individuals in our lives currently or at any point in our lives, throughout our lives, who are there simply to be present with us, to accompany, to support, to stand by, to love, to observe, but to not interfere. I don't know that that's a fault on a human level. Sometimes human love means you have to interfere and you have to help and step in and do something. So it's not like that can't be a form of love, but that's what makes this a different kind of love. The kind of love in which you are never alone even when you are alone, because there is a constant presence that, while silent, is this constant hum of love that carries you through. That's how I interpret him saying, your silence is so precious. Rather than it being a flaw or a frustration, it's something he sees as precious because it represents that constancy. And then finally, he ends with possibly my favorite part when he says, how long will it be before the world hears your song in mine? Oh, that is a day I hunger for. And I love this line and I love this ending because for me, it serves as that reminder as we encounter Michael Jackson's work, as we encounter our understanding of him, trying to break down his own philosophy and approach to his work, we can see once again that he viewed his work and his mission as representing God, as representing universal love and power and beauty and strength. When he says, how long will it be until the world hears it? That strikes me and it hurts my heart, to be honest, because I read that as, when will the day finally come that I am understood and that the world understands what I am all about and what I am trying to do? Will it ever happen? And it makes me wonder if at any point Michael felt that the larger world, not always understanding him or his mission, I wonder if he ever felt that he was failing in some way to live up to the song or the message that he felt was his to deliver. I wonder if he ever questioned his own ability to deliver that message, or if he saw it as a flaw in the world, being unable to hear it. That ending makes me very emotional, to be honest, because I wonder, when we think about Michael, his relationship to God, I mean, yes, he was a pop artist. Yes, he made great music about all kinds of things that were not just humanitarian and global messages of love. But the point is, Michael used his platform that he developed by so many different means of talent and appeal and charisma to also express and to largely express and project a kind of love and a kind of message from God of acceptance and love. And if he was waiting at this point and hungering, as he says, at this point, to know that the world was understanding his message and hearing God in it, all I can hope is that Michael did at some point recognize that his message was coming through clearly to a lot of people. And I want to believe that people like me, who became fans well after he died, far and long after his name was muddied by so many people, I want to believe that he sees this type of love, this newer love, as representative of the fact that even without his presence on earth, his message and his meaning does carry on. It's not limited only to the people who were there when he was here, but going far beyond that. I really hope he can see that even now and see it and believe it. So needless to say, I love this piece. And of course, these lines and this whole conversation does get me emotional coming up on this anniversary of his death. Of course it does. But as always, I am eternally grateful that we have this book. We have all the various works of Michael Jackson. We have so much that we can appreciate and enjoy about him that will always be here, that will never die. And I am so glad for that. So I really want to thank you for listening and tuning in for this episode. I love this piece. It's one of my favorites, I have to say. As I analyzed it, I really felt a connection to this piece. I got chills a couple of times. Honestly, I did. I got chills a few times thinking about this connection. And the way he wrote this piece, there's this sense of longing and there's this warmth, and I feel so many colors when I read this piece and the ending, and there's this like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost this tidal wave of feeling for me that I experience when I get to that ending, when I can picture, Michael genuinely trying to understand when that synchronicity would happen. When would people understand his message? And how he had to hunger for that day. Beautiful. A beautiful piece written by a beautiful man, and I'm so very happy I had the chance to read it and share it with you today. So thank you so much for joining me. If you are interested, please join for the bonus episode tomorrow. It will not be about a piece written by Michael, but I will be sharing something I wrote, and I will be discussing an experience I had as it relates to Michael. And so I really do hope you join in for that, if nothing else, to commemorate Michael on this day. But either way, I will talk to you either tomorrow or next week. I wish you all the best, and until then, take care.